Brought to you by Copal, the world's biggest delivery-linked art fund. A Bloomberg UTV Pulse initiative.
Today, the spotlight is going to be on the recovery of the art market and the outlook looking into 2011 and beyond. First episode, of course, we spoke to you about art as an investment tool. Today, we go one step further. Good to see you, Sahar.
Thank you. Good to be here again.
All right, so I guess we can get kick-started straight away by looking a bit at the history of the evolution of art, I guess.
That's right. But before we get into that, let's first introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Mr. Bose Krishnamachari with us, a very well-known artist, a curator, and now he's running his own gallery, BMB, as well. Also here with us is Mr. Gopal Mechandani. He's an art writer and a chartered accountant as well. A perfect mix of art and business. And we have with us actor and dancer Shivani Wazir. She's going to be speaking to us on just purely loving art and really not caring about the market there. But first, before we go any further into this discussion, let's take a look at a brief history of the art market when we're going to be talking about how it's going to perform in 2010 and 2011. Let's also find out how it performed when it first started to pick up from the 1990s. The Indian art market has undergone transformational changes since the arrival of Sotheby's in the late 1990s through Tayyab Mehta's phenomenal Mahisasura in 2005 to the present resurgence. Mahisasura was auctioned for a record $1.6 million at Christie's in London. Since then, creations of masters like Raza, Souza, and Hussain have met with rapturous reception in international auctions, setting new heights for Indian art.
Tayyab Mehta, Hussain, Gaitonde, Raza, Souza, Ramkumar, all these artists were pioneers of Indian contemporary art post-independence. So I think all of them are very, very important. Tayyab has got a very small body of works. As far as his aesthetic excellence is concerned, or to say aesthetic value, his aesthetic value was established long back. I mean, when I met him in 1988 for the first time, his aesthetic value was already established. The market value was not established, yes.
But it's not just the masters' works that enjoyed a great run at the market. We reached a point where contemporary art was riding as high a wave and sometimes even competing with the prices of the masters. Subodh Gupta's sculpture, A Very Hungry God, was auctioned for a record $1.4 million at Saffron Art. And Bharati Care's iconic elephant set a new benchmark at $1.53 million. For connoisseurs, celebrated artworks represent not only an investment in alternative asset, but also in timeless wisdom. Art is beautiful. The true value of art far transcends the usual business cycles that most investments encounter.
Oh yeah, the market is starting to have some confidence again. I mean, where we're seeing the market inside of India be coming back the fastest is, of course, for the more established artists. So it makes sense. People feel confident buying Hussain or Ram Kumar or RP to sing because these are senior artists that are, their places in history are well established. So the next step would be artists such as Atul Dodia, Subodh Gupta, who have pretty much made their reputation already, and they're working with serious galleries both in India and outside of India. So people feel comfortable with that.
Okay, that's a little bit about the history. Let's get straight down to the recovery process and looking ahead into the art world. Boss, let's start off with you. You have an interesting vantage point, being an artist yourself and being associated with the gallery. Is the worst over from what we saw from 2008 to about 2010, you think? And is this perhaps a sustained recovery on the basis of what we've seen from Bharti and Raza of late?
I think it is getting better and better, and it is going to be really good time for Indian art, in international market and stuff like that. And lots of people are looking at the younger generation of artists, young talent. People are scouting for young talent, and they can see there are lots of, wealth underneath their canvas or drawings or sculpture, installation, etc. Nowadays, everybody is looking at not just canvas. They are looking at, for example, Bardik here. She's a contemporary artist. And when you look at the surface of elephant, it is with the sperms and stuff like that, but, people are not looking at beauty. Beauty is not the thing, people are interested in the content, So the collectors are learning, more aware, and there are lots of potential in contemporary art. Yeah.
Okay, let me just get in Shivani at this point. Shivani, when we hear both say that people not really looking at beauty, now you're someone who's been looking at art, collecting art, purely following it as a passion, really, for the pure love of art. You think you're ever going to reach a point when you buy a painting thinking that its value is going to appreciate in the next 5 years?
One of the things that Bose said about content, that's absolutely true. When he said about beauty, that's not true. Because in content there is beauty, and perhaps what Bose is saying is the normal vision of beauty being perfect, perfect skin, a perfect feature. But to me, beauty is something that mesmerizes you. And art, in a sense, is recording whatever's going on around us. It could be in your environment, it could be in your mind. And in that quality of going into someone's mind or their lives and what's happening around them lies the beauty. And in that beauty lies the content. And I think art is something that has been a part of our DNA forever. It's not something that we say now there's a market for it, so now people should start collecting. It's a natural instinct of a human being to want to record, to want to draw. Drawing is very relaxing, is very rejuvenating, and to record our history has always been a passion.
Fair point. Gopal, let's talk a little bit about the road ahead. Seher in the previous episode was raising the point with one of our guests as to whether a couple of these recent paintings are actual green shoots of the market, whether it's Raza or Bharti, or are these just flash in the pans? And, because the size of the Indian market, as we were discussing last time around as well, is very, very small. I mean, when you look ahead, you don't buy anything with the prospect of it not appreciating. You want to create wealth.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, you'll have the Shivani here and there, where you buy for the love of it. But if people are from the middle class that are looking to get into it, they want to make money off it. Let's be clear about that. So is this a good time to perhaps be entering if you're looking out, say, maybe 1-2 years?
Yeah, I think this is a good time because for one, we just come out and the bubble has burst, and prices are down from the top, from the peak. See, the thing is that it's not buying any art. It's about, the key thing, the key word I use is cultural consensus. So if you believe that the artist is good and there's a cultural consensus of the artist, like for instance Souza, Nasreen Mohammadi, they all have a cultural consensus.
Quite a fair point there, but what we'd also like to bring up in this discussion here is of the modern versus contemporary.
Yes.
As a collector, would you also put in works or your money on your contemporary artists?
Yeah, I've got a contemporary art.
Yeah.
Of course I have.
Right, and there's no fear involving their performance, their stability.
See, the thing is that when I collect, I collect for two reasons. Primary, I collect because I love art. I'm passionate about it, and art is part of my life. At some level, but obviously when I put money, when I buy this thing, there has to be a threshold. Beyond a point, I have to look at, as a collector. You have to look at what I'm paying for it.
Right.
Okay, so there's a threshold.
Okay.
So beyond that, it's not about passion and all of that. There's a threshold for everybody.
Right. We'll have to take a tiny break at this point of time. We're going to continue with this discussion of modern versus contemporary in just a bit.
Welcome back. Still with Artwise. It's still in conversation with Gopal, Bose, and Shivani, getting their thoughts on the recovery process in the art market. Bose, the question we were raising with Gopal before we went into the break: where is there more appetite? Is it still with the modern masters? Is there still more appetite for contemporaries? I mean, you probably look at price when you enter, and the modern guys probably got at a higher price whether you look at a Raza or the other works of the kind. Is there a sustenance model for the new guys that are coming in?
They have a history, when you talk about modern, when you talk about contemporary, like it's limited time, we are talking about when you talk about contemporary. A contemporary great artist can be, you can see it as a kind of historical work they produced and stuff like that. It's like how many works are available in the market. That is what people are looking at. Masters' works are not really available. So it is, the value is like people are looking for masters. Contemporary artists, anyways, you get it. So people wait for it. Maybe you don't get the right work if you don't pick up on right time. I think it is something to do with your awareness, basically awareness to collect art. And so contemporary art, when you compare with the modern, I think modern masters pick up more price because like people are aware of that modern masters.
Right.
People are not contemporary history, contemporary who is who in the art world.
Okay, on
Yeah.
the same subject, let's see what other contemporary artists like Jitish Kalath and Riyaz Komu have had to say.
Global investors are discovering India's rich tradition of art, exemplified by priceless national treasures like Ravi Verma, Amrita Shergill, and Rabindranath Tagore. The rich pluralistic tradition is being carried forward by Indian masters as well as contemporary artists whose artworks manage to remain commendably resilient amid the downturn. The Indian story is likely to rub off on new artists waiting in the wings to cross the $1 million mark. With global collectors hungry for great icons, Indian art has surely lots of surprises in store.
Globally, there's a huge amount of interest in the art being made in this country, and that's tied into two things. One is there's a great interest in the country, and I think with that comes a certain interest in the art. And the other is the actual internal rigor of the art that's being made here. It's almost a density of 50 years of history that is now allowing a set of young and mid-career practitioners to kind of go back and look at the recent history, the recent art history of this own country and build on it.
As an economy, India is now being compared with the West and China more favorably than ever before. Investors and collectors are getting drawn not only to India's booming economy, but also a promising art story.
We have several artists of high repute and caliber, very, deep knowledge about. Most of them are scholars, so that's also one reason, they're researching back on, the quality of certain kind of works. I think in that context, they're getting, certain kind of respect now. Overall, people looked at India after China, because, it's an emerging economy. It's also a slogan which is used to kind of boost, Indian pulse.
With international and domestic connoisseurs rushing to own a piece of the booming Indian art story, Cheer is back in the market pondering the long-term potential of contemporary and new artists.
Shivani, what is your own reading on the value of art at this point? If I'm not mistaken, I think in 2009 we saw the value of modern art fall by about 30% on average. Contemporary, meanwhile, fell about 60-70%. Does that pose a significant risk to an investor when he's looking at more contemporary art vis-a-vis modern art, and thereby that is why the prices of modern art are that much higher, because the downside perhaps is restricted?
Well, as Gopal was saying before, it's all a question of demand and supply. The modern artists are X in number, and there is a capping on how much and what quality you'll find. So in that sense, automatically the pricing will be driven higher. But I think the graph can only go up, because in time these will be those limited commodities, these will be those established commodities, and these will be those artists which you'll grow to love in whatever space you're watching them.
Gopal, the kind of work our contemporary artists from India are bringing out is world class. It's at par with what international artists are doing. It's at par with what artists in China are doing.
Sure.
Why do you think there's a difference in valuation of their prices when we compare it to China or internationally?
See, I think the Chinese market started much earlier, for one. Okay. Two is that I think we have to also recognize that economy has been doing well, but the Chinese economy started to liberalization and the reform started maybe much earlier in the 80s, as we started probably 10, 15 years later. And the attention of the world has started moving to China. And it's only now recently that the attention of the world has moved to India. Every art that comes out from any country or from any space is of that time, is of a period. And it doesn't mean that art that was done 100 years ago will be superior to art done today. There's no hierarchy. So today's contemporaries, some of today's contemporaries will be tomorrow's masters, and maybe bigger masters than of yesterday.
All right. Let's take another break on that note. We're going to continue talking about contemporary versus modern and the recovery of the art market in about 2 minutes from now. Stay tuned.
Hey there, welcome back. We were talking about the recovery of the art market, how it's going to perform in the leftover year of 2010 and the outlook in 2011. And we also touched upon modern market versus contemporary. Bose, is it difficult right now at this time when people are quoting figures as such of modern dipping by 30%, contemporary dipping by 70%? Visually, of course, contemporary hasn't dipped at all. I mean, visually it's just incredible, and I was saying earlier, it's at par with works coming out from international artists. But is it still difficult to promote or push contemporary art?
It is very difficult to promote Indian contemporary art because lack of infrastructure. It's going to be great, Anish Kapoor is going to show end of this year. It is
Wow.
definitely Indian art market is going to be really high after that. I don't deny masters, but I think we have great minds, young talent has lots of history to prove.
Gopal, how do you value art? I mean, can you actually take an undervalued, overvalued, fairly valued concept for the contemporaries, perhaps? Because if this is going to be the appreciating part of the market, then this is where you need to be putting your money in.
You don't have an empirical way of valuing art. It doesn't work in this kind of situation. So the key thing is cultural consensus, and for that you need scholarship, you need literature,
Can
you
I
need all of that.
interrupt?
Sure,
I'm sorry. Some of the places, for example, when you talk about Bharti Kurt's success, it is not just because of Bharti's work is great, how it is promoted. They have the
Right.
biggest PR companies, like Hausen and Wirth or whichever gallery is promoting this artist's work. They work with the auction houses, they work with the international media. There's a kind of push, that's the way an artist's work is to be pushed or shown, how is it presented. We don't have such kind of places to promote, that kind
Sure.
of, really international PR company, you have to pay a lot of money to, promote an artist's work. It's not just about the work. How is it presented? Where is
See,
it
that's
shown?
a very important point you
Yeah.
raise. Let's bring in Shivani in that. Shivani, is it always about the painting or the art, or is it more even about how it is marketed, perhaps, and that adds the incremental value to it?
Well, that's exactly what I wanted to add to what Bose was saying. I was in London in September last year when Subodh's exhibition happened. People had flown in from all over the world to see the work. I mean, what an opening the show had. There were 2 different venues. It was absolutely stunningly presented. Now, I see a lot of that coming in here as well. Slowly, our shows have become so much more spectacular and so much more effort goes into putting them together, whether it was Poratia's show where he had all his ants made out of Harley Davidsons, or it was all the recent books which are being launched, which are really cataloging and creating a greater interest. So that is important. Another thing that you were asking Gopal earlier on about why China has such a developed art market and why don't we have that here? Well, simply put, it's the respect that they've given to this medium for centuries. Look at the way they prize calligraphy. So it's all a question of input output. So when we give our art that kind of importance, that kind of relevance, automatically there will be collectors created, and once there are collectors created, our artists will have more reason to be innovating and developing and creating the stunning work that they are.
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you there, Shivani. We've absolutely out of time. But on that note, that's a brilliant note to end the show on, actually. I mean, when we talk about the outlook of the Indian art market, we also have to make sure that an infrastructure is in the right place.
Absolutely. And I think the point about education was well taken as well.
Right.
Okay, so on that note, we'll thank Shivani, Gopal and Bose for taking the time out and joining us in our studios. As always, if you have been, we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot.
Brought to you by Copal, the world's biggest delivery-linked art fund. A Bloomberg UTV Pulse initiative.